On a satellite map of a denied country, a target enters a concrete building near a desert road. 2 days later, that target will be dead. The men who kill him do not exist on any military roster. Many viewers assume Delta Force runs every shadow mission. On the Delta Force map, most people are wrong. Some work is offered to Delta Force first and turned down on principle. The legal phrase behind that choice is Title 50, and Washington does not say it lightly. The American public usually imagines Delta Force as the final answer on every secret map in the Pentagon. The black helicopters, night vision footage, compound wall, and masked operators all point to one name. Officially, the Army name is 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, under Joint Special Operations Command. But the key word in that Washington sentence is military. Delta Force is not just a capability. Delta Force is a legal identity. A Delta operator is a United States soldier wearing the authority of the Department of Defense even when his uniform is hidden, his name is classified, and his aircraft never appears on the evening news. In a war zone like Iraq or Afghanistan, that identity gives Delta Force enormous reach. In a country where the United States is not officially at war, that identity becomes a flashing red light on the White House Situation Room screen. This is where the Washington split begins. Title 10 is the military lane, and Title 50 is the intelligence lane. The difference sounds like a lawyer's filing cabinet in a marble courthouse, but on a dark road outside a foreign capital, that difference decides whether the men in the truck are soldiers or intelligence officers. Title 10 covers the armed forces, the combatant commands, the Pentagon budget, and the chain of command that runs through the Secretary of Defense. A Title 10 mission can be classified, compartmented, and almost invisible to the public. But it is still a military mission. The Pentagon owns it. The armed forces answer for the Pentagon mission. The Congressional Defense Committees can ask about it. A uniformed American captured on that mission creates a military incident the foreign government can display on a television camera. Title 50 lives in a different Washington hallway. Title 50 covers intelligence activities, covert action, presidential findings, and oversight by the Congressional Intelligence Committees. A Title 50 covert action is not supposed to be random or lawless. A covert action requires presidential approval, a foreign policy objective, and notification to intelligence overseers. But the entire point of a covert action is that the role of the United States government is not meant to be apparent or publicly acknowledged. That Washington sentence is the hinge of the whole documentary. The Central Intelligence Agency is not better at raids than Delta Force. The Central Intelligence Agency is not magically outside American law. The Central Intelligence Agency simply carries a different political instrument. When the White House wants an operation that can be denied, delayed, blurred, or kept out of the military ledger, Washington starts looking toward Langley. Inside Langley, the part of the Central Intelligence Agency built for this work is the Special Activities Center. Within that world, Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch is the land warfare arm that overlaps most clearly with the Delta Force skill set. The rifles, radios, surveillance cameras, armored vehicles, mountain compounds, safe houses, and foreign partner camps can look familiar. The authority behind the Langley operation is different. That difference matters because Delta Force does not turn down certain missions out of fear. Delta Force turns them down because the mission itself is not properly military. The target may be real, the intelligence solid, and the men capable. But the Washington question is, what happens after a foreign police unit finds an American soldier's body, a military serial number, or a Pentagon fingerprint in a country where Congress never authorized a war? Start with foreign fighters. Delta Force can train foreign forces under lawful Department of Defense programs, and American Special Operations Forces have spent decades doing exactly that in partner camps, desert ranges, and jungle schools. The Pentagon has authorities for security cooperation, counterterrorism support, and advise and assist missions with foreign units. Those authorities can be broad, but they are not blank checks. They come with State Department coordination, congressional notice, human rights restrictions, and a military chain of command. now move the same foreign fighter mission into the shadows. The foreign partner force is not a recognized national army. The fighters are irregulars from a border province. The host government must not be seen accepting American help. The covert operation may shape who controls a valley, a port, or a rebel corridor. The Pentagon lawyer looking at that map does not see a clean training mission. The Pentagon lawyer sees covert action, wearing a military jacket. That is where Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch becomes attractive to Washington. Central Intelligence Agency officers can recruit, handle, train, pay, and guide foreign partners inside an intelligence framework when the policy goal is deniable influence abroad. The Title 50 distinction is not about teaching a man to shoot a rifle at a dusty range. The distinction is about whether that man is becoming a partner force in a known military campaign or a proxy in an operation the United States will not publicly own. The same problem appears in cartel territory. A cartel safehouse in northern Mexico, a fentanyl warehouse near a border highway, or a smuggling boss moving through a mountain village can look like a target set Delta Force could solve in one night. The surveillance drone follows the pickup truck. The heat signature enters the warehouse, and the strike team waits on a runway. But the Pentagon does not operate on movie logic near the Mexico border. A cartel terrorism label does not automatically create a military battlefield. Mexico is a sovereign country, not a declared war zone. Cartel violence is a national security crisis, but it is also a law enforcement problem, a diplomacy problem, a sovereignty problem, and a congressional authority problem. A Delta Force raid inside cartel territory without the right authorization would not just be risky. A Pentagon raid could become the story of the decade in Mexico City and Washington. That is why senior military leaders often prefer intelligence support, surveillance, partner assistance, and law enforcement cooperation over unilateral military action in cartel zones. A Black Hawk helicopter on the border is visible. A drone track over the desert is visible. A Delta Force team crossing a border fence is a different kind of signal. If the mission fails, the Pentagon cannot shrug and call it a misunderstanding. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch sits in the uncomfortable space between what the White House wants and what the Pentagon should not publicly own. The Central Intelligence Agency can support intelligence collection, liaison relationships, partner operations, and covert options with a different approval chain. That does not make cartel action easy. The Central Intelligence Agency framework does make the political packaging different. In Washington, packaging is often the difference between an option that dies in a legal meeting and an option that reaches the president's desk. Then there is the word Washington hates using in public. Assassination sits on the Washington table like a loaded word. Executive Order 1233 prohibits assassination by anyone acting on behalf of the United States government. That executive order sentence is still on the books, and it matters. The Central Intelligence Agency does not possess a cartoon license to murder anyone the president dislikes, and Delta Force does not have that license either. But after September 11th, the United States built a separate category around targeted, lethal action against enemy leaders in the armed conflict with al-Qaeda and associated forces. The White House language became self-defense, armed conflict, imminence, capture feasibility, and law of war. The Central Intelligence Agency drone campaign and some special operations raids lived inside that contested legal architecture. The White House public argument was never that assassination was suddenly allowed. The public argument was that a lawful target in an armed conflict was not an assassination. That distinction sounds narrow in a law school classroom. On a compound wall in Abbottabad, that distinction decides whether a raid is framed as a military strike, an intelligence operation, or something deliberately blended between the two. The operation that killed Osama bin Laden used Special Operations Forces, but the Central Intelligence Agency led the intelligence architecture, and the president authorized the mission from the top. The famous lesson inside Washington was not that one organization replaced the other. The Abbottabad lesson was that the cleanest operation can still require a messy legal costume. Delta Force can capture or kill enemy combatants when the military authority is solid. Delta Force cannot simply become a private instrument for deniable political killing in a country where no armed conflict exists. When the target is outside a formal war zone, when the host nation cannot know, when the White House wants no public military footprint, the Delta Force answer often becomes no. Not because the operators lack the nerve, because the Pentagon legal container is wrong. That Delta Force refusal is the part of the story civilians often miss. Elite military units are not just measured by what they can do. Elite military units are also measured by what they refuse to do. A professional soldier understands that some missions can ruin a regiment, damage a president, and create a war no one intended. A Delta Force commander who says no to a bad authority is not being timid. He is protecting the unit, the army, and the country from a mission that belongs somewhere else. If this Central Intelligence Agency ground branch and Delta Force breakdown is the kind of military history you want more of, subscribe while the Langley map is still on the screen. Now back to the mission file, because the most interesting part is what happens after Delta Force says no. The ground branch workaround begins with people who already know the work. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch has long drawn from former Special Operations personnel, including veterans from Delta Force, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Marine Special Operations, Army Special Forces, and other high-end military units. A retired Delta operator brings the Central Intelligence Agency a rare combination. He knows clandestine movement, foreign weapons, surveillance detection, close protection, rural mobility, and the pressure of making decisions when a radio call can change a presidency. But Langley does not simply hand a former Delta operator a new badge and send him back to the same war. In Delta Force, the operator is backed by helicopters, quick reaction forces, intelligence cells, and a uniformed chain of command. In Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch, the officer may operate undercover through a station with foreign partners and with a political objective that cannot be publicly named. That Langley shift attracts a certain kind of veteran. After 20 years in uniform, some Delta Force operators are done with the machine. The deployments, the casualty notifications, the medical appointments, the staff jobs, and the Pentagon paperwork wear men down. But the covert work itself still pulls at Delta Force veterans. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch offers a strange continuation. The flag changes from the Army to Langley. The mission language changes from operation order to finding and cable. The Langley silence stays familiar. This is why the Delta Force crossover pipeline matters. The Delta Force move is a legal migration. A man who once moved under Title 10 can later move under Title 50. The same experience that made him valuable to Joint Special Operations Command makes him useful to the Central Intelligence Agency. The Pentagon does not always resent migration. In some cases, the Pentagon quietly benefits from it. When a mission is too politically radioactive for a uniformed command, the existence of Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch gives senior defense officials a release valve. The Pentagon can say the military lane is wrong without telling the president the objective is impossible. Langley can offer a narrower, deniable, intelligence-led alternative. The Fort Bragg and Langley relationship is not rivalry. The Fort Bragg and Langley relationship is a pressure system. That Fort Bragg and Langley pressure system has limits. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch officers give up things that uniformed Delta Force operators keep in clearer form. A Delta Force soldier belongs to an Army lineage, a service record, a veteran system, and a military burial culture that families understand. A Central Intelligence Agency officer may receive honor inside a classified lobby at Langley, where a marble star can represent a life whose details remain secret even after death. For a former Delta operator, that trade can be heavy. Civilian intelligence service can bring federal benefits, but it does not keep building military retirement credit in the same simple way as active uniform service. Prior military service may already carry Veterans Affairs eligibility, but a Central Intelligence Agency assignment does not turn a civilian officer into a soldier again. The Central Intelligence Agency family may know less. The Delta Force hometown may hear nothing. The newspaper obituary may say government service and stop there. That silence is not romantic when a widow sits in a kitchen with folded documents and half answers. Delta Force families already live with secrecy, but the military still has ceremonies, chaplains, casualty assistance officers, and a public grammar for sacrifice. Central Intelligence Agency families can face a thinner public record. A name may be spoken inside Langley, while the outside world sees only a blank space. For some former Delta operators, that is too much shadow for one lifetime. Others accept the Langley shadow because the mission still feels unfinished. After Vietnam, Central America, and Afghanistan, some veterans drifted toward gray intelligence work between diplomacy and war. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch is the modern version of that frontier. The uncomfortable truth is that Delta Force and Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch often want the same thing. They want the hostage recovered from the apartment building, the bomb maker located before the airport attack, and the smuggler network mapped before the convoy disappears into the desert. The Delta Force argument is rarely about courage. The Washington argument is about ownership. Ownership is the word that follows every denied mission through Washington. If Delta Force owns the mission, the Pentagon owns the consequences. If the Central Intelligence Agency owns the mission, the White House owns a covert action problem. Both Washington lanes have oversight. Both lanes have lawyers. Both Washington lanes can fail. But the Washington political blast radius is different. A captured Delta Force operator is a soldier of the United States Army. A foreign government can parade that soldier's equipment on television and accuse Washington of invasion. A captured Central Intelligence Agency officer can still create a crisis, but the crisis begins in the language of espionage, cover, liaison, and denial. The map does not care how brave the men are. The map cares what flag the world can prove was there. Senior Pentagon leadership understands this better than anyone. The generals and civilian secretaries know Delta Force is a national treasure because its credibility depends on lawful military purpose. If every deniable job becomes a Delta Force job, the unit stops being a precision military instrument and becomes a political tool. That would damage the Army, damage Joint Special Operations Command, and eventually damage Delta Force itself. So the Pentagon sometimes feels relief when a mission moves to Title 50. Pentagon relief does not mean indifference. The military may still provide intelligence, aviation, logistics, or planning support when law permits. Former teammates may still recognize each other across a secure room in a foreign station. But the lead agency matters because the lead agency carries the political blame when the map turns red. That is the quiet bargain between Fort Bragg and Langley. Delta Force remains the military scalpel for missions the United States is prepared to own as military action. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch becomes the covert instrument for missions Washington cannot publicly hang around the Pentagon's neck. The Title 50 loop now closes where the satellite map began. The target in the denied area country walks into the concrete building, and Washington already knows the argument that happened before the first aircraft moved. The question was never whether Delta Force could do it. The question was whether America could admit that Delta Force did it. That is why some missions move from Delta Force to Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch. The mission moves because law, politics, diplomacy, and deniability decide what skill alone cannot decide. So here is the debate for the comments under the black satellite image. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch is not the rival of Delta Force. Central Intelligence Agency Ground Branch is the escape hatch Washington uses when the Pentagon is right to say no. If that sounds like wisdom to you, or if that sounds like a dangerous loophole, put your argument in the comments under the Delta Force map. And if you want the next documentary on Naval Special Warfare Development Group after Abbottabad, subscribe before the end screen fades.